shimmering energy field that kept him locked in place. His 4 arms hung at his sides, bound by restraints that hummed with power. The proud crest on his head, once a bright purple that marked his status as a warrior general, had faded to a dull gray. Around him sat representatives from 40 different species, all waiting to hear what he had to say. The Karen looked up at the assembled council. His 3 eyes blinked slowly, adjusting to the harsh light. He had commanded armies for 60 years. He had conquered 12 star systems for the Vorten Empire. Entire civilizations had surrendered at the mere sight of his battle fleets. But now he was here, a prisoner, about to confess to the greatest military defeat in Vorton history. "I will tell you everything," Thakran said, his voice deep and rough. "I will tell you how we lost 3,000 warships in less than 8 minutes. I will tell you how the humans destroyed Battlefleet Omega without losing a single vessel of their own. I will tell you why the Vorten Empire will never threaten another world again." The council members leaned forward. Some took notes. Others simply stared. Everyone wanted to know how the mighty Vortons had fallen. The Karen began his story. For over 1,000 years, the Vorten Empire had spread across the stars like a dark tide. They were not cruel for the sake of cruelty, but they believed in strength above all else. The strong ruled, the weak served. It was simple. It was clean. It had worked for centuries. The Karen had been born into this world of conquest. From childhood, he was trained to fight, to lead, to dominate. He rose through the ranks quickly. By the age of 30, he was commanding his own battle group. By 50, he was one of the Empire's top generals, advising the high command on which systems to invade next. 6 months ago, Vorten scouts discovered a new system. It was unremarkable in most ways, but the 3rd planet from its sun caught their attention. It was covered in water and green land. Scans showed billions of inhabitants. Most importantly, the planet had resources the Empire needed: rare metals, organic compounds, and a position that would serve as an excellent staging point for future expansion. The planet was called Earth. Thekkarin remembered the briefing well. He stood in the command center on the Vorten homeworld, studying the holographic display of Earth and its solar system. The intelligence officer, a young Vorten named Kelrath, presented the findings. "The planet is divided into nearly 200 separate nations," Kelrath explained. "They have no unified government, no planetary defense force. They fight wars among themselves constantly." The Karen had nodded. This was perfect. Divided enemies were easy enemies. "What is their technology level?" he had asked. "Primitive," Kelrath replied. "They have basic space travel. They have reached their moon and established small colonies on a neighboring planet called Mars. They use nuclear weapons, chemical propellants, and early laser technology. Nothing that could threaten even our oldest ships." The other generals in the room had laughed. One of them, Admiral Corvin, had slapped his hand on the table. "We could take this world with a single battle group. Why waste 3,000 ships?" But the Karen had been cautious. "Protocol demands overwhelming force for any first contact situation." "We follow protocol," the High Command had agreed. Battlefleet Omega was assembled. 3,000 warships, including the massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets open. Admiral Corvin was given command of the fleet. The Karen would observe from a command ship at a safe distance. The plan was simple. Jump into the system, broadcast the standard ultimatum, wait for the inevitable surrender. If the humans refuse, destroy their military installations and force submission. Standard procedure. They had done it 100 times before. Thakran remembered feeling confident, perhaps too confident. He had studied the intercepted human transmissions. He heard their languages, saw their entertainment, monitored their news broadcasts. The humans seemed loud, chaotic, and disorganized. They argued about everything. They couldn't agree on how to run their own world, let alone defend it. One intercepted transmission stuck in his memory. It was a news broadcast from a place called Korea. The human reporter was discussing tensions between human nations, potential trade wars, and internal political conflicts. The names mentioned were Daeon, Minji, and Hunwoo. They were leaders of some kind, Arguing over resources and territory, they fight each other, the Karen had thought. They waste their energy on internal conflicts. They will be easy to break. This was his first mistake. His greatest mistake. The Vorten Empire had never fought a species that constantly fought itself. Every other civilization the Vortons encountered had been unified, or at least organized under a single banner when faced with external threats. The Vortons assumed this was normal. They assumed that a divided species was a weak species. They were wrong. The Karen now understood what they had failed to see. Humans fought each other not out of weakness, but because they were always testing themselves, always pushing, always improving. Every war taught them new lessons. Every conflict forced them to innovate. While the Vorten Empire had grown comfortable in its dominance, humans had spent thousands of years locked in an arms race with themselves. But the Karen didn't know this then. 6 months ago, he simply saw an easy target. The order was given. Battlefleet Omega began its journey to Earth. It would take 3 weeks to reach the human system. During that time, the Karen reviewed the battle plans again and again. Everything seemed perfect. Every scenario had been calculated. Every possible human response had been considered, or so he thought. As the fleet approached human space, Karen felt a strange unease growing in his chest. It was nothing he could explain. The data all pointed to an easy victory. The human military forces were scattered across their system, poorly coordinated, using technology that was decades behind Vorten standards, yet something felt wrong. The Karen pushed the feeling aside. He was a general of the Vorten Empire. He had conquered worlds before this one. He would conquer worlds after. Earth would be just another mark on his record. In the tribunal chamber, the Karen paused. His 3 eyes closed for a moment. When he opened them again, he looked directly at the council. "I was a fool," he said quietly. "We were all fools. We saw what we wanted to see. We saw weakness where there was strength. We saw chaos where there was preparation. We saw prey where there were predators waiting in the dark." He took a deep breath. "What happened next will haunt me until the day I die." And it should. Because 3,000 ships full of Vorten warriors are gone, and it took the humans less time to destroy them than it takes me to tell you this story. Battlefleet Omega dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 3,000 warships materialized in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their shields activated. The fleet stretched across space like a metal storm cloud, blotting out the stars. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of the flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Fist of Dominion. He watched the view screen as the distant blue planet came into focus. Earth, such a small, insignificant world. Yet it would soon bear the Vorten banner. "All ships report ready status," his communications officer announced. Corvin nodded. "Broadcast the ultimatum. Standard format. Let them know we have arrived." The message went out across all frequencies, in every major human language that Vorten translators had decoded. The words were simple and clear. "Surrender your world to the Vorten Empire. You have 48 hours to comply. Resistance will result in total annihilation." Corvin expected panic. He expected desperate pleas. He expected the humans to fracture and turn on each other, blaming one another for this catastrophe. Instead, 6 hours later, a single small ship appeared on their sensors. "Admiral, we have an incoming vessel," the sensor officer reported. "It's tiny, maybe 20 meters long. No visible weapons. They're requesting permission to dock." Corvin was amused. "They send one ship. Grant them permission. Let's see what they have to say." The human ship glided into the Fist of Dominion's docking bay. It was sleek and white, with strange markings on its hull. 3 humans emerged wearing simple gray uniforms. They showed no fear. They walked with calm, measured steps. The leader was a woman named Ji-won. She had short dark hair and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Behind her walked a younger man named Seojin, carrying a data device, and an older man named Young-soo, who wore the insignia of an engineer. Corvin met them in the reception chamber. He towered over the humans, his forearms crossed, his crest raised high to show his authority. Behind him stood 24 Vorten guards, fully armed. "I am Admiral Corvin of the Vorten Empire," he announced. "You will deliver your surrender now, or watch your world burn." Juan stepped forward. She didn't bow. She didn't tremble. She simply looked up at the massive alien admiral and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "I am Captain Jiwan of the United Earth Defense Command. We have received your message. We request 48 hours to consult with our unified command structure and prepare a proper response." Corvin blinked. Unified command? The intelligence reports said Earth had no unified government. "You lie," Corvin said. "Our scans show nearly 200 separate nations. You have no unified command." Guan smiled slightly. "Things have changed recently. We request 48 hours. Siajin stepped forward and handed the data device to one of the Vorten guards. "This contains our formal request and the coordinates where we will deliver our response. Please review it at your convenience." Corvin took the device. He was surprised by their composure. Most species begged for mercy at this point. They offered tributes, hostages, anything to delay the inevitable.
"Hours,"
Corvin said. "You will surrender then, or die?" Youngsu, the engineer, spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, almost friendly. "Thank you for your patience, Admiral. We hope you will remain in your current position. Moving deeper into our system would be ... unwise." The three humans bowed slightly, then returned to their ship. Within minutes they were gone. Corvin stood in the chamber, staring at the empty docking bay. Something about that encounter bothered him, but he couldn't identify what. Back on his observation vessel, Thackerin watched the recorded meeting between Corvin and the human delegation. He replayed it 3 times. The humans showed no fear. None at all. That was unusual. Most species showed at least some anxiety when confronted with a fleet this size. "Sir, we're intercepting increased communication traffic from Earth," his intelligence officer reported. "Multiple nations are broadcasting to each other. They're coordinating something," Thackerin said. "They're organizing their surrender. Track all military installations. I want to know where they plan to stage the formal ceremony." But as the hours passed, the intercepted communications became stranger. Human military units were moving, but not in retreat. They were taking up positions. Space stations around Earth and Mars were going to high alert. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were shutting down, and their workers were evacuating. "They're preparing to fight," the intelligence officer said, sounding confused. "But with what?" "Their weapons are no match for ours." Thackerin frowned. He pulled up the tactical display. The Vorten fleet sat at the edge of the system, engines idling, weapons ready. Everything seemed normal, but the sensors were beginning to show anomalies. Strange energy readings appeared throughout the solar system. At first, they were small, barely noticeable. Then they grew stronger. The sensor officer tried to identify them, but the computer couldn't match the signatures to any known technology. "Send scout ships to investigate those readings," the Karen ordered. 5 scout ships broke formation and headed toward the nearest energy signature, near a planet called Saturn. They reached the coordinates, scanned the area, and then simply vanished. No explosion. No distress signal. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. "What happened?" The Karen demanded. "Unknown, sir. All contact lost. No debris detected." Corvin sent more scouts to different locations. Same result? They disappeared without a trace. 30 hours into the 48-hour deadline, the Karen received another message from the humans. It was the same woman, Jiwan, speaking from what appeared to be a command center. "Admiral Corvin, General Thackerin, we know you are both listening. We have noticed your scout ships entering our defensive perimeter. We strongly advise you to cease these activities and withdraw from our system. Your 48 hours are not yet complete." Corvin was furious. "Defensive perimeter? What defensive perimeter? We see nothing." But the truth was becoming clear. The energy signatures were weapons. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They had been there all along, hidden somehow, waiting. Thackerin sent orders to Corvin. Do not advance. Hold position. Let the 48 hours expire. Corvin was proud. He was angry. He sent several squadrons toward the human colonies on Mars, expecting easy targets. The colonies appeared abandoned, empty structures on the red planet's surface. Sir, those colonies were evacuated, an officer reported. No life signs, and destroy them, Corvin ordered. Show the humans we are serious. Before the Vorten ships could fire, another transmission came through. This time, it was a different human, a man named Minseo, who identified himself as a scientist. This is your final warning. Leave our system now. We do not want to fight, but we are prepared to defend ourselves. Please withdraw, Corvin laughed. A scientist threatens the Vorton Empire. Tell me, human, with what will you defend yourselves? Minseo's expression didn't change. With everything we have spent the last 300 years building, please, Admiral. Turn back. Corvin cut the transmission. He looked around his bridge at his officers. All ships, advance toward Earth. Combat formation. Prepare to demonstrate our power. 48 hours expired. 3,000 Vorten warships began moving deeper into the human solar system. And then, for the first time in 1,000 years of conquest, the Vorten Empire discovered what real fear felt like. The Vorten fleet moved through space like a predator stalking prey. 3,000 ships in perfect formation, their weapons hot, their shields glowing with power. Admiral Corvin stood on his bridge, watching the blue planet grow larger on the view screen. Soon he thought it would be over. Soon, the humans would understand their place in the universe. But something was wrong. The sensor displays were going crazy. Energy readings were spiking all across the system. The computer kept trying to identify the sources but failed every time. The readings didn't match anything in the Vorten database. No known weapons. No known power systems. Nothing. Sir, the energy signatures are increasing, the sensor officer reported. His voice carried a hint of worry. They're all around us. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. The Curran, watching from his command ship far behind the main fleet, felt his blood run cold. He had seen many battles in his long career. He had seen planets burn and civilizations fall. But he had never seen sensor readings like this. The energy signatures were massive, far more powerful than anything the Vorten scouts had detected during their initial survey. Corvin, halt the advance. The Curran ordered over the command channel. Something is wrong here. Nothing is wrong, Corvin replied. His voice was confident, almost arrogant. The humans are simply activating their primitive defenses. Let them. We will sweep them aside like dust. Kakarn wanted to believe that. Every tactical analysis said the Vortens should win. They had superior numbers, superior technology, superior firepower. On paper, this battle was already over before it began. But the Karn had not survived 60 years of warfare by ignoring his instincts. And his instincts were screaming at him to run. Corvin, I am ordering you to halt and reassess, Thakran said again. Your orders are noted, General, Corvin replied. But I am in command of this fleet, and I say we advance. The fleet continued forward. Meanwhile, in the darkness of space, things were waking up. Things that had been silent and still for decades were coming online. Weapons platforms hidden in the asteroid belt began charging their systems. Satellites that appeared to be simple communication relays revealed their true purpose. Mining stations transformed into fortresses. Even the moon itself seemed to bristle with hidden armaments. The humans had been busy. For 300 years. Since humans first reached space, they had been preparing. Not for conquest. Not for expansion. For survival. Because humans knew something that the Vorton Empire had forgotten. They knew that the universe was big and dangerous and full of things that wanted to hurt them, so they had built defenses. Quietly, secretly, while fighting their wars on Earth. They had also been looking up at the stars and wondering what might come from them. And they had prepared. Captain Juan sat in the command center deep beneath the surface of Earth around her. Hundreds of officers monitored displays, coordinated defensive positions, and tracked the Vorten fleet's movement. This was the United Earth Defense Command, a facility that technically didn't exist. At least, it hadn't existed in any official capacity until 3 weeks ago when the Vorten scouts first entered the Solar System.G1 watched the main display. The Vorten ships were getting closer. They were past Mars now, approaching the asteroid belt, right where Earth defense wanted them. All stations report ready, Seojin said, from his position at the communications console. Orbital platforms are charged. Moon batteries are online. The asteroid grid is active, Guan nodded. She opened a channel to the Vorton fleet. One last chance. One final warning. Admiral Corvin, this is Captain Jawan. Please turn back. We do not want to fight you. But if you continue, we will defend ourselves. Corvin's face appeared on the screen. He was smiling, his 3 eyes gleaming with confidence. You have nothing that can stop us. Human. Your warnings are meaningless. Surrender now, or be destroyed. Guan felt a sadness settle over her. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this. The humans had watched the Vorten Empire for years, studying them through deep space telescopes and intercepted transmissions. They knew the Vortons were strong. They knew the Vortons were proud. But they had also hoped the Vortons were smart. Apparently not. Then may your gods forgive us, Jiwan said quietly, because we will not. She cut the transmission and turned to her command staff. All stations execute defensive protocol. Weapons free. Rules of engagement. Disable, not destroy. We want prisoners, not corpses. The orders went out across the human defensive network. On the Fist of Dominion, alarms started blaring. The sensor officer's hands flew across his console, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Sir, we have weapons lock. Multiple sources. They're everywhere. Corvin laughed. Let them lock on. Their primitive lasers and missiles cannot penetrate our shields. All ships, return fire. The Vorten fleet opened fire first. Energy beams and missiles streaked through space toward the nearest human platforms. It was an impressive display of firepower, the kind that had shattered planets. The human platforms absorbed the hits without flinching. Their shields held, and then they fired back. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for generations. The humans didn't just shoot. They didn't just aim. Every single shot they fired was calculated by quantum computers powerful enough to simulate entire universes. Every shot was timed to exploit weaknesses in Vorten shields that the Vortons themselves didn't know existed. Every shot was designed to disable, not destroy. Energy beams of a type the Vortons had never seen before lanced out from hidden positions. They didn't look impressive. They weren't massive explosions or overwhelming shows of force. They were precise, surgical, perfect. The first Vorten ship, a destroyer on the fleet's outer edge, simply stopped. Its engines died. Its shields collapsed. Its weapons powered down. The crew sat in darkness, wondering what had happened. Then the second ship died. Then the third. Then the 10th. Then the 100th. What's happening? Corvin shouted. Damage reports? No damage, sir, the officer replied, his voice shaking. The ships are intact, but all systems are failing. Power cores are shutting down. It's like they're being switched off. The Karen watched in horror from his distant vantage point. On his tactical display, red icons were appearing across the battlefield. Each icon represented a disabled ship. They were spreading like a disease through the fleet. Hundreds of ships were going dark, and the humans hadn't lost a single platform. Retreat. The Karen screamed into the command channel. Corvin, order a retreat. But Corvin was frozen, staring at his view screen as his mighty fleet died around him. His pride had become a prison. A human fighter squadron appeared on the sensors. They moved through the battlefield like ghosts, too fast, too agile. Their pilots flew with inhuman precision because they weren't entirely human anymore. Their minds were linked to artificial intelligence systems that enhanced their reflexes to impossible levels. One of the fighters, piloted by a woman named Hyman, weaved through Vorten fire without being touched. Her weapons barely needed to fire. The human platforms were doing most of the work. She was just there to mop up any stragglers. "This is Blue Leader to command." Hyman's voice came over the human communication network. "The enemy fleet is completely disabled in Sector 7. Moving to Sector 8? Copied that, Blue Leader," Juan replied. "Remember, disable only. We want them alive." "Understood. Command." Though honestly, they're making it easy. On the Fist of Dominion, sparks flew from consoles. The lights flickered. Corvin felt his ship shudder as system after system went offline. He finally understood. Too late, but he understood. The humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had developed weapons to kill themselves and had gotten terrifyingly good at it. Then they had pointed all that innovation outward, toward the stars. The Vortons were facing weapons designed by a species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times and had learned from every mistake. "Sir, we've lost propulsion," an officer reported. "Shields are at 10%. Weapons are offline." Corvin slumped into his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew sat in silence. Outside, the rest of the fleet was suffering the same fate. The battle had lasted 7 minutes. Silence fell across the battlefield. 3,000 Vorton warships floated dead in space, their power cores cold, their weapons silent. Inside each ship, confused and terrified crews sat in emergency lighting, trying to understand what had just happened. Admiral Corvin stared at the darkened displays on his bridge. Emergency power kept minimal life support running, but everything else was gone. No engines. No weapons. No shields. His mighty flagship, the Fist of Dominion, had been reduced to a floating coffin in less time than it took to eat a meal. "Status," he croaked. His voice was hollow. The communications officer worked at a manual backup panel. "All fleet ships report the same conditions, sir. Total systems failure. No casualties reported, but we're completely helpless." Corvin would have preferred casualties. At least then he could say they had fought. But this was humiliation. The humans hadn't even tried to destroy them. They had simply turned them off, like switching off a light. A transmission crackled through the emergency speakers. It was Captain Jiwan's voice, calm and measured as always. "Vorton vessels, this is United Earth Defense Command. Your ships are disabled, but intact. Your life support systems are functioning. You are not in immediate danger. However, you are now prisoners of Earth. We are sending rescue ships to evacuate your crews. Please do not attempt to resist. Further resistance will result in permanent disabling of your life support systems." Corvin wanted to rage. He wanted to order his warriors to fight to the death. But he looked around his bridge and saw the truth in his officers' eyes. They were beaten. Completely and utterly beaten. And they all knew it. From his observation ship, General Thakarin watched the aftermath in stunned silence. His command vessel had been far enough back to avoid the human weapons. The humans could have destroyed him too, he realized. They knew he was there, but they had let him live. Why? His communications officer spoke quietly. "Sir, we're receiving a direct transmission. It's addressed to you personally." "Put it through," Thakarin said. A human face appeared on his screen. It was a man older than the others, with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a military uniform with markings that indicated high rank. "General Thakarin, I am Colonel Jihoon of Earth Defense. We need to talk." Thakarin wanted to refuse. His pride demanded it. But his survival instincts were stronger. "I am listening. Your fleet is disabled. Your admiral will be taken into custody. Your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. They will not be harmed unless they attempt to harm our personnel. Do you understand?" Thakarin nodded slowly. "I understand. But why? Why did you not destroy us? You clearly had the capability." Jihoon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of experience. "Because we remember what it's like to be on the losing side, General. Every nation on Earth has lost wars. Every nation has buried soldiers. We know that warriors following orders are not always responsible for the decisions of their leaders. Your people will be judged fairly, but first, they will be safe." The transmission ended. Thekaran sat alone in his command chair, processing what had just happened. The Vorten Empire had invaded hundreds of worlds. They had crushed countless civilizations. And now they had finally met someone stronger. Someone who could have annihilated them, but chose mercy instead. It was a lesson in power that Thekaran would never forget. Human rescue ships began arriving within hours. They were medical vessels, transports, and support craft. No weapons. Just help. On the Fist of Dominion, Corvin and his crew watched through the viewports as a large human ship approached. It docked gently with their disabled vessel, and human soldiers came aboard. They were armed but non-threatening. They moved with professional efficiency. A human medical officer named Sujin led the team that entered the bridge. She was young, probably in her early 30s, with kind eyes and steady hands. She approached Corvin carefully, as one might approach a wounded animal. "Admiral Corvin, I'm Dr. Sujin. I'm here to check on your crew's health and coordinate the evacuation. Are there any injured personnel?" Corvin stared at her. This small human, who should have been terrified of him, was offering medical care. To her enemy, to the being who had come to destroy her world. "Why?" Corvin asked. "Why help us?" Sujin smiled sadly. "Because you're injured, Admiral. And I'm a doctor. It's what I do." Over the next several days, every Vorten crew member was evacuated from the disabled ships and brought to secure, comfortable facilities on Earth's moon. They were fed. They were given medical care. They were treated not as monsters, but as prisoners who still had rights. Thekaran was brought to Earth itself, to a facility where he would be questioned. He expected torture. He expected humiliation. Instead, he got Colonel Ji-hoon sitting across from him at a simple table, offering him water and asking him questions. "Tell me, General," Ji-hoon said. "What did you think when you first saw our world?" "I thought you were weak," Thekaran admitted. "You were divided, fighting among yourselves. I thought conquest would be simple." Ji-hoon nodded. "I understand. We've heard that from others. The problem is, you saw our conflicts and assumed we were vulnerable. You didn't understand that our conflicts made us stronger." "How?" Thekaran asked. "How does war make you stronger?" "Because every time we fight each other, we learn," Ji-hoon explained. "We develop new weapons, new tactics, new technologies. Then we share them eventually, because today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally. For thousands of years, we've been locked in an arms race with ourselves. We've learned to fight smarter, faster, more efficiently. We've made mistakes and paid for them in blood, but we remembered those lessons." Ji-hoon leaned forward. "The Vorten Empire has been dominant for so long that you forgot how to adapt. You became comfortable. You assumed your strength was permanent. But we humans W8..." The lights in the tribunal chamber were cold and white. General Thekaran sat in the center of the room, surrounded by AE. Never had that luxury. We've always had enemies, so we never stopped improving. Thekaran absorbed this information. It made sense in a terrible way. The Vortons had conquered everyone they met, so they had stopped innovating. They used the same tactics, the same weapons, the same strategies for centuries. Why change what worked? But the humans had been fighting themselves for millennia. Every war forced innovation. Every conflict demanded new solutions. By the time the Vortons arrived, the humans had literally thousands of years of warfare experience encoded in their military doctrine. "The weapons you used," Thekaran said. "I've never seen anything like them." "Quantum disruptor arrays," Ji-hoon said casually. "They target the electromagnetic fields that hold your ship's systems together and selectively shut them down. We developed them during the resource wars of the 21st century. They were designed to disable enemy infrastructure without causing civilian casualties. We've just been improving them for the last 200 years. Thekaran felt sick. The humans had weapons that could disable entire fleets, and they had designed them to be non-lethal. What kind of species develops such precise, powerful weapons and then uses them to spare their enemies? "What will happen to us?" Thekaran asked. "That depends," Ji-hoon replied. "You'll stand trial. The council you saw will hear evidence. But understand something, General. We don't want to destroy the Vorten Empire. We want to stop it from hurting others. There's a difference. Why spare us? The Karin asked. We came to conquer you. Jehun stood and walked to the window. He looked out at Earth, beautiful and blue, hanging in space. Because mercy is not weakness, General. We could have killed every Vorten in that fleet. We could have sent weapons to your home world and ended your empire. But what would that accomplish? More death, more suffering, more hatred. The cycle would never end. He turned back to Thakarin. We humans learned something after thousands of years of fighting. We learned that peace is harder than war. Forgiveness is harder than revenge. Building is harder than destroying. But those hard things are what make us strong. Not our weapons, not our ships. Our willingness to choose the difficult path of mercy over the easy path of destruction. Thakarin said nothing. He had no words. For 60 years he had believed that strength came from dominance. Now he was learning that true strength came from restraint. 3 months had passed since the battle that lasted 7 minutes. General Thakarin stood once again in the tribunal chamber, the same cold white light shining down on him. But now his story was complete. The council had heard everything. They had reviewed the evidence. They had interviewed survivors. And now they would deliver judgment. The lead judge, being from a species called the Mexeri, spoke in a deep, resonating voice. General Thakarin, you have confessed to attempted genocide, unprovoked invasion, and conspiracy to commit crimes against sentient beings. The Vorten Empire stands accused of these crimes across multiple systems. How do you plead? Guilty, Thakarin said, without hesitation. To all charges? The murmur that went through the chamber was one of surprise. Most war criminals fought their charges. Most denied everything until the end. But Thakarin had learned something in his time on Earth. He had learned the value of accepting responsibility, the judge continued. The council will deliberate on sentencing. However, before we do, the humans have requested to present additional evidence. We will hear from Ambassador Kyungi of United Earth. A human woman stepped forward. She was elegant and composed, wearing formal diplomatic attire. Kyungi approached the center of the chamber and bowed slightly to the council. Honored members, thank you for hearing me, she began. Earth does not dispute the charges against General Thakarin or the Vorten Empire. Their crimes are real and documented. However, we wish to present evidence regarding the nature of their defeat, as we believe it is relevant to future sentencing and galactic security. A holographic display activated above the chamber. It showed the battle from multiple angles, the Vortan fleet advancing, the human weapons activating, the systematic disabling of every Vorten ship. What you are seeing is complete footage of the engagement, Kyungi explained. As you can observe, Earth defense could have destroyed every Vorten vessel. Our weapons had that capability. We chose not to use it. She gestured, and the display changed, showing the interior of Vorten ships. Crews sitting in darkness, confused but alive. Every Vorten crew member survived the battle. Every single one. Despite the fact that they came to our world with the intent to enslave or exterminate us, we chose to preserve their lives. The council members leaned forward. Studying the images carefully, Kyungi continued. This was not mercy born of weakness. It was mercy born of strength. Earth has the capability to wage total war. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have biological agents that can sterilize worlds. We have quantum weapons that can cause stars to collapse. We developed all of these because throughout our history, we have been very good at killing each other. She paused, letting that sink in. But we also learned the price of such destruction. We learned that violence begets violence. That hatred breeds hatred. So when the Vorten Empire came to us, we made a choice. We would defend ourselves absolutely, but we would not become the monsters we were fighting. A new image appeared. It showed Vorten prisoners being treated in human medical facilities. Dr. Sujin and her team working to save wounded Vorten soldiers. Human engineers repairing damaged Vorten ships so they could be towed to safe locations. These are not the actions of a weak species, Kungi said firmly. These are the actions of a species that understands true power. Power is not just the ability to destroy. Power is the ability to show restraint. Power is choosing when not to use force. The council was silent, absorbing her words. Earth requests that this council consider not just punishment, but rehabilitation, Kungi said. The Vordan Empire must answer for its crimes. But the Vordan people should not be destroyed. They can learn. They can grow. They can become something better. We know this because we humans were once like them, conquering, dominating, destroying, and we learned to be better. She looked at Thakkarin. General Thakkarin has been honest about his crimes. He has cooperated fully with our investigation. He has shown remorse. This is the beginning of change. Earth advocates for a sentence that punishes the guilty, but allows for transformation. Kungi stepped back. The council members consulted among themselves in hushed tones. While they deliberated, Thakkarin reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about the battle. He thought about the human warriors who had defeated him so completely. He thought about Dr. Su-jin, who had treated his wounded soldiers with genuine care. He thought about Colonel Ji-hoon, who had talked to him like a person, not a monster. But most of all, he thought about what he had seen in the human databases. Ji-hoon had shown him Earth's history, the wars, the genocides, the terrible things humans had done to each other. And yet somehow, they had learned to stop. They had found a way to channel their violence into defense rather than conquest. It gave him hope. If humans could change, perhaps Vortons could too. After 2 hours, the council returned. The lead judge spoke. We have reached a decision. General Thakkarin, you are sentenced to 20 years of service. You will work with the United Earth's Defense Command as a consultant. You will help identify other aggressive species and develop diplomatic protocols to prevent future conflicts. You will teach others what you have learned here. Thakkarin bowed his head. I accept this sentence with gratitude. The judge continued. The Vortan Empire will be placed under galactic oversight. Military operations are suspended indefinitely. Reparations will be paid to all conquered worlds. And Vortan leadership will undergo mandatory education regarding peaceful coexistence with other species. It was a harsh sentence, but fair. More importantly, it was merciful. The Vortan Empire would survive, but it would have to change. After the tribunal ended, Thakkarin was taken to a secure but comfortable facility where he would begin his service. To his surprise, his first visitor was Captain Ji-won. Captain, he said, I did not expect to see you again. Wanted to check on you, Guan said simply. And to give you something. She handed him a datapad. On it was a message prepared for broadcast across the galaxy. It was Thakkarin's confession, edited and formatted for mass distribution. We're sending this to every species we have contact with, Ji-won explained. Not to humiliate you, but to warn them. To show them what happens when you underestimate Earth.
Thakkarin.
Read the message. It was his story in his own words, but with an additional section at the end. A warning, the warning read, to any species considering aggression against Earth, know this. They are not divided. They are not weak. They are not unprepared. They have spent thousands of years learning to wage war, and they have become very, very good at it. But more importantly, they have learned when not to wage war. Do not mistake their restraint for weakness. Do not mistake their mercy for vulnerability. They are the only species we know that fights wars against themselves for practice, and then they show mercy to their enemies. APRA. Shit Earth with respect. Approach Earth with peace, because if you approach Earth with violence, you will learn the same lesson we did, and you will not enjoy the lesson. Thakkarin looked up at Gi-won. This is a strong warning. This needs to be, Gi-won said. We don't want to fight again. We want to be left alone to grow and explore and build. But if someone else comes like you did, we need them to know what happened to you. We need them to understand the choice they're making. Will it work? Thakkarin asked. Gi-won smiled slightly. I don't know. But I hope so. Because next time, we might not be so merciful. There are factions on Earth who wanted to destroy your fleet completely, who wanted to make an example of the Vorten Empire that would echo across the galaxy. We chose differently this time. But that choice gets harder each time someone tests us. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Use your time well, General. Teach others what you learned. Help us prevent the next war. Because that's the only way any of us survive in this universe. Not through conquest. Through cooperation. After she left, Thekaran sat alone with the datapad. He read the warning again. Then he began to write his own additions to it. His own observations about the humans and what made them so dangerous and so merciful at the same time. He would spend the next 20 years teaching others about Earth, about the species that looked weak but was strong, about the civilization that fought itself for millennia and emerged not broken but refined like steel and fire, about the warriors who could destroy worlds, chose to heal them instead. And he would tell everyone who would listen, do not threaten Earth, do not test. Earth do not assume that because they are kind. They are weak. Because humans understand something that took the Vorten Empire 1,000 years to learn. The greatest strength is not the ability to destroy your enemy. The greatest strength is the ability to spare your enemy and make them your ally. And if you cannot see the wisdom in that, then you deserve whatever lesson Earth chooses to teach you. The warning went out across the galaxy. Some species listened. Some ignored it. But all of them eventually learned the same truth. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage.